Hey, what is going on, guys? Today on the channel we're going to be doing a review of my iPad 10.2 inch 7th generation. Now throughout this video I'm going to be referring to it as the 7th gen iPad. Now before we get started here, be sure to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new upload. So first off, let's talk about why I got this iPad. So basically, I need a new iPad because my iPad mini 2 was on its way out. It was officially unsupported by Apple, so I needed a new device. Well, when I was shopping around, my first instinct was to buy another iPad mini. But this iPad was larger, it was cheaper, so I decided, well, let me go ahead and give the bigger iPad a shot again because I used to own an iPad 2. So that is why I got this iPad, and I'm going to tell you my thoughts about this iPad throughout this video. So first off, let's go ahead and talk about the specs of the iPad 7th gen. So if you want to compare it to the 6th gen, it's really not that much different. There's just a few key things that are slightly different. So first off, you have the display. The display on this iPad is slightly larger. No longer can you get a 9.7 inch iPad like it has been ever since the first iPad came out. The base screen size is now 10.2 inches, so they increased the screen size for the 7th gen. And honestly, you really wouldn't notice it unless you set a 6th gen and a 7th gen next to each other, and then you really do notice the difference. Also, the addition of the smart connector. So this allows you to connect Apple's smart keyboard to this iPad, which is something you could not do on a base iPad before. Now another thing they did here was they added an extra gigabyte of RAM. So this helps out with iPadOS's new multitasking features, so you can do slide over and split view no problem on the iPad. So that is very nice that they did that. But this iPad is still rocking the same A10 chip that we saw first in the iPhone 7. So I was really surprised that Apple didn't at least bump this up to an A11, but that's their choice. Maybe this year or next year, whenever a new base iPad is announced, it will have slightly better internals. But for now, our only performance increase was that extra gigabyte of RAM. For the battery life on this device, Apple claims 10 hours. Now, on my mini, I definitely got 10 hours, but on this thing, it really just depends on what you're doing. Of course, it's having to power a much larger display, and I think that has a lot to do with it. It seems like I'm having to charge this iPad a lot more frequently than I did my mini, but maybe I'm just crazy, I don't know, but Apple claims 10 hours. I'd say that's only if you're doing things like web browsing or doing email or something simple like that. But if you plan on doing any gaming or any more intensive things like video editing or things like that, I imagine your battery life is probably going to be cut in half because the big display definitely drains the power down. Now, this iPad also has Apple Pencil 1st generation support, and I prefer the 2nd gen Apple Pencil on the iPad Pro, but the Apple Pencil 1st gen is still not a bad thing. Now, of course, on this device, it is the only iPad that doesn't come with a laminated display, so there is kind of a gap between the actual pencil tip and the glass, which can be a little bit weird. But if you start using the Apple Pencil for a little while, you're not going to notice it. It doesn't bother me at all. It hasn't affected, the pencil performance or my handwriting or anything like that. But the Apple Pencil is still a great device, even with the 1st gen. And this is a really good note taker, and that is what I've been primarily using it for in school, is to take notes with GoodNotes 5. And I will be having a video coming out soon all about my note-taking experience with the new iPad. Now, speaking of school, this iPad has pretty much replaced my MacBook Air. I mean, I still use my MacBook Air, but this iPad does just about everything I need it to. Whether it's doing assignments in Microsoft Office, or taking notes with GoodNotes, or just doing anything. I always seem to grab the iPad before I grab the MacBook Air. And I don't even take the MacBook Air to school with me anymore. So that says a lot about how far iPadOS has come. I mean, we have desktop glass browsing, we have better multitasking. I mean, this thing is just getting better and better. And I'm so glad that iPadOS is now available. Now, let's talk about some things that I like about the 10.2 inch iPad and things that I don't like about it. So, first off, I already mentioned this just a second ago, but I love iPadOS. iPadOS makes this thing fantastic. I mean, you got to think about it. You have the same software on the cheapest iPad that you do with the most expensive iPad. So yes, you get all the multitasking and things like that on the base iPad. And iPadOS overall is just really quick, it's smooth. You don't even hardly realize that you have an A10 processor in this thing unless you're doing some more serious tasks. If you try to edit 4K video or something like that, you might notice a slowdown, but this thing is just perfect for pretty much everybody. I mean, it handles everything. I've never had a single issue or hiccup with it so far. Also, I love the addition of the slightly larger screen. Like I said, I was coming from an iPad mini. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, but now I'm used to it, and I probably will never go back to an iPad mini again. I mean, this display is fantastic, and I also just love how this thing has basically replaced my laptop. I mean, this iPad, I just never thought an iPad would be able to replace my laptop. I figured I'd have to get a Surface or something like that in order to do that. Now, things that I don't like about this iPad, well, I mean, the design is still good. It's that same design that we've had over the years that we know and love. But I think it's kind of time for a little bit of a refresh. Yes, this is a thin device. It's a good looking device. But this design is getting a little dated, isn't it? I think it's time maybe for a new design on this thing. It seems like Apple is just recycling parts, because this is basically an iPad Air, just a slightly smaller screen, and the iPad Air is just slightly lighter than this. So I think it's time for a new design on this thing. Second, a laminated display. I think that should be standard on all devices. I mean, this is pretty much the only device that does not have a laminated display. And again, the display, it's not really bugging me, but it does bug a lot of people for some reason. Especially if you're coming from a laminated display and go to this, you're definitely going to notice it. But my Mini 2 didn't have one, so I don't really notice it. And the display quality is still fantastic and all that, but laminated display should definitely be standard with this thing as well. And finally, 32 gigabytes. It's good enough for me, it's good enough for students, but it's not good enough for some people as well. I don't know why Apple is still using 32 gigs in 2020 for the base model iPad. That's just simply not enough for a majority of people. I mean, every device is standard with 64 gigs, and that's what it should be. Now for me, like I said, it's not a problem. For students, it's probably not a problem. If you're doing a lot of cloud-based things, if all your stuff's saved in the cloud, if you're doing a lot of desktop browsing instead of downloading apps, then that helps as well. Right now, I'm only using about 13 gigs on this iPad, but I don't have a lot of applications or stuff stored on it, so that helps a lot. And if you want it to, you can always bump up to the 128 gig model. But at that point, you're getting very close to iPad Air prices, and for just a few dollars more, you can get an iPad Air, which has a better processor, even a slightly bigger screen, and a base storage of 64 gigabytes. So that's one thing I don't really like about the iPad. So overall, what are my final thoughts about this thing? So for most people, this is the iPad they need to buy. It's got a great size, great form factor. It handles everyday tasks, no problem. It's a great student device. It's a great note-taking device. And I overall just love this thing. So guys, that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll have some more iPad content coming your way soon. But anyways, guys, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching as always. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you all in the next video.